It's Fully Threaded Radio, episode 217.
This space is consolidating, and it's consolidating quick. Frankly, there's a lot of markets out there consolidating, whether it be healthcare and so on. But one of the reasons I think that this business is consolidating is because
Yeah, I hadn't heard that acronym before, but it's related to exactly what we're talking about here.
Yeah, I know what that is. That's what they're using as the emergency to that one person can declare the tariffs, whatever he or she wants, depending on their mood for the day.
But I think the theme here, and when this respondent, the first one said all in chaos, for sure, that's what we're hearing from people. And what's interesting is there's a theory out on Wall Street that
he was telling me about Hollywood, Jason Bertone, and how he bombs it, right? Jason can hit the ball pretty far. So Jason, Bob Bayer, myself, and Rich, we're playing in Vegas the day before the show, and I guess he says I hit a country mile, so it's stuck from that day. I mean, and the fact that I do barbecue too, I guess that doesn't hurt it.
It's time for Fully Threaded Radio.
It is Fully Threaded Radio, voice of the FCH Sourcing Network. If you buy, sell, manufacture, import, distribute, or otherwise are involved in the industrial fastener industry, well, this is the podcast for you. Hey everybody, Eric Dudas with you. This time, coming to you from the extremely warm climes of the Sonoran Desert, courtesy, in a way, of Southwest Airlines. I'm in the Southwest. Wow, what a story. That whole thing I'm not really going to get into, but it does explain also the crappy sound quality on this recording. All my regular gear is not with me, so I'm going to keep this piece of the episode pretty brief, and it's episode 217 of the Fully Threaded Radio podcast. Appreciate you listening in. This will be a little bit longer of an episode than we have been doing, kind of a throwback, just because there's so much to jam in. Hope you've been enjoying some of the shorter special episodes we've put out recently, but this one is several segments smashed together. We'll kick it off with Kara Bassi. She's with MW Components. We've kind of done a soft launch with MW. Of course, they're our newest podcast sponsor. It's high time we had Kara on the podcast, and she makes her debut on today's opening segment. Then we'll kick off the Fastener News Report today with a discussion with the newly elected president of the National Fastener Distributors Association, Mr. Ed Smith. He, of course, with Worth Industry USA. Ed will be leading the National Fastener Association for the next year, and you'll get to size up his platform. Leading us to Mike McNulty, this time joined by Baird analyst Dave Manthe. I tell you, the FDI has been a roller coaster. We're on the upswing again, at least the main FDI number. Mike and Dave will kick that around. That's the Fastener News Report. Then I guess the second feature, we'll call it today, is a conversation with Rob Big Country Reynolds of InSequel Software. He's fresh off a huge brisket cook-off that he did with some of his non-fastener cronies. During this conversation, he talks a little bit about barbecue, but also what's new at InSequel and how they're reacting to current fastener industry market conditions. Good conversation. Plus, as always, Carmen Vertullo will bring us another fastener training minute. So a lot jammed in this one. It'll go by fast, and I'm not going to prattle on too much myself. The title sponsors of Fully Threaded Radio are Star Stainless. Right off the shelf, it's Star. Goebel Fasteners. Quality the first time. Go Goebel. And Brighton Best International. Tested, tried, true. Brighton Best. Fully Threaded Radio is also sponsored by Buckeye Fasteners, BTM Manufacturing, Eurolink Fastener Supply Service, Fastener Technology International, InSequel Software, the International Fastener Expo, J. Lanfranco, MW Components, Solution Industries, Volt Industrial Plastics, and Worth Industry USA. Let us know what you think of the podcast, or if you have comments or suggestions, the email address, ftr@fullythreaded.com. And before you ask, Brian's just fine. Lots going on behind the scenes here at the FCH Sourcing Network, folks, if you only knew. My little mishap with Southwest Airlines is just the tip of the iceberg, I got to tell you. Anyway, he's just fine. He says hello. He'll be back with us for an upcoming episode soon. One other thing before we get to it, the new Link magazine just came out. It's the summer 2025 edition, and I'm going to congratulate Brighton Best International. Rosa Hearn leads up the marketing team over there, of course. And on the Link side, Tracy Lumia. Great work, you guys. The cover, of course, is a celebration of the Brighton Best 100-year anniversary. BBI's making the most out of it, and when you see the cover of this Link, I think it does a great service to celebrating that momentous milestone. Good job, everybody. And when you pick up the issue, don't forget to look at page 14. Thanks, Leo, for the great placement. All right, it's a quick one. We'll drop here, play a couple of messages, and we'll be back to put a wrench to this one. Thanks for listening to Fully Threaded Radio, everybody.
They're like more cowbell for the fastener industry. Brian and Eric. Fully Threaded Radio.
Brighton Best International is now your source for weld fasteners. This new offering consists of headed concrete anchors, shear connectors, spot weld nuts, hex weld nuts, retainer weld nuts, and flange CD studs. Our weld fasteners come in low carbon steel, stainless steel, and aluminum. Other styles and sizes are available per request. Weld fasteners are available from stock throughout our distribution centers across the country.
Goebel Fasteners has consistently increased its stock inventory in Houston, Texas, as well as focused on developing new, innovative battery-powered cordless tools to improve industry efficiency. Our company's strategy is to provide a level of quality and innovation that stands out among the rest. If you are interested in being part of a brand that is revolutionizing the industry, make sure to contact Goebel Fasteners today to see what we have to offer. Goebel Fasteners, the leading rivet source.
With Star Stainless, our personalized service and nationwide network of distribution centers allows you to order rivets, hose clamps, and fasteners from one source. Star continues to be your one-stop shop to consolidate vendors, reduce transactions, and save on shipping costs. Choose Star Stainless for a comprehensive inventory that meets all your hardware needs. Star Stainless Screw Company is a division of Linfast Solutions Group.
This is Jason Baines of J. Lanfranco Fasteners, and you're listening to Fully Threaded Radio.
Karabasi, you're with MW Components. You're on Fully Threaded. Thanks so much for being here.
Eric, thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it. I mean, given all the esteemed guests you've had on this podcast, I'm not sure how I snuck in, but certainly appreciate you having me on.
Well, anytime, and you're another name on that list. So you're with MW Components. You've been there, I think you told me, about 13 years. Let me ask you this. What do you tell people when they ask you what you do for a living? Especially folks who are not in the fastener industry. I'm always curious by this answer.
It's such a great question because it's really hard to explain how exciting it is really to design something, work and manufacture or procure it, and then kind of iterate with the customer to really solve the problem that they need and that they need to solve. And sometimes it takes a few iterations really to get there. So, what I explain to, a lot of people who aren't in the manufactured economy, and I think, a lot of folks, especially Eric of my generation, don't really understand how much is manufactured here in the States until they start opening their eyes to it. I certainly went through that same transformation myself to say, wow, there's a lot here. But what I explain is, we're problem solvers. We provide fasteners and hardware for a variety of applications. And I think what really brings it to life for people is talking about where these parts are used in their everyday life. And that, from the youngest to the oldest generation really helps them picture what you actually do. So I tell them, we make screws, nuts, bolts, standoffs for applications that go into, the Boeing airplanes, to the lawnmowers out there available that you're using every weekend, to, medical device applications. I mean, it's just incredible, the fastening and joining of things, how many applications are out there. And I think, bringing those applications to life for people gets them really as excited about manufacturing as I am. And, I always say, like, I'm a manufacturing professional. I love my job. And, the best part about it is getting out on the floor and helping customers solve those problems, from bringing a design to life or procuring that design and working through those challenges. So it's a real fun place to be. I mean, as you all know, you kind of get stuck in manufacturing and distribution, and especially in this fastener world, and it's really hard to get out of it. That's for sure.
Oh, good answer. Yeah. Well, when you just tell people generically, well, I'm in the fastener industry, they give you a blank stare. So those specific examples really help make it exciting, spice it up, right?
Most definitely.
Especially, imagine you're at a little kid's birthday party. I make the screws that go on the rocket ship on your birthday cake.
It's funny, Eric. I've got a 2-year-old at home, and my husband's at Sikorsky's and aircraft, and it's kind of hard to compete with, like, hey, I work on Black Hawk helicopters, right? But what we tell my 2-year-old son is, like, mommy solves all the problems that you deal with every day, and we even got him a little fastener kit, and he's screwing his own screws together. And so you got to teach him young, got to teach him young.
Yeah, big time. Well, it sounds like you're doing a good job on that. All right. So you obviously are doing a lot of engineering support, but you're playing a sales role with MW. So let me ask you, did you come at this from the technical side, or did you come at it from the sales side?
Yeah, great question. So I was a salesperson. That's how I started with MW. And look, I've had the privilege of working there, as you said, for 13 years in multiple capacities. And, I don't have enough wonderful things to say about them because they've supported me through, my MBA, all my personal life transitions. And so it's an awesome company, and they do a ton of hiring from within. I mean, honestly, I started, working the phones. I started in on the floor with setups and things like that, really learning from the ground up. So although I started on the sales side, I say, a lot of my learning really came from spending time at the end of the day with folks on the shop floor. But even, there's such great resources in this industry, like the IFI training. I took that, a few years back with Carmen Vertullo. And, there's so many great experts in this business. Even some of our sales reps that have sold for us for many years, like a Marty Nolan, constantly pick up the phone trying to call them and say, hey, have you come across this problem? And so, to your point, there's a bench strength at MW, 100 plus engineers that can support me. But the folks I learn from the most are, really within the industry. And probably worth mentioning too, Eric, my background's in physics. So I'm a huge physics nerd over here, and but finding some practical way to actually use my degree some days. So it's a lot of fun, but it's really the people that you talk to and rely on where you get the most learning, for sure.
Well, that's very interesting. Okay, physics background, that makes a lot of sense. Well, I'm sure you're doing a very good job of your technical support. What areas are you concentrating on right now, and what have you focused on during the course of your career? I'm sure you've expanded the commodities that you've been supporting.
Yeah, most definitely. I think, so I started off at MW on the spring side, actually, which is, not too far from the fastener side of the business. And as MW provides a lot of products, certainly for the space. But, then really dove into more of our screws, nuts, bolts, kind of the bread and butter of what this industry is, which is fun. But I'd say most of my learning has been around, the materials side, especially because materials nowadays have been harder to come by. So, helping folks with engineering out alternative materials, or even, better design for their applications and things like that. So it's been fun. I've learned a lot in a lot of different products, and it's amazing how a lot of these products tend to complement each other as you learn more and more about them.
I think before we were recording, you were telling me that you were focused on springs for a while. I was looking at the MW website a little bit before we connected today, and I think it's the only fastener site that I've looked at that actually has a spring calculator on it. And there's, like everything else, when you look closely at it, there's so many details that you have to be aware of. And yeah, very impressive. But now you're more into the threaded fastening area. Is that
Did I get that right?
Yeah, externally and internally. Some of our machining side of the portfolio addresses some of the internally threaded components, but yeah, mostly externally, internally. And you're right. I mean, these same as fasteners, right? These springs go into everything from NASCAR to SpaceX to, I mean, you name it. It's just a ton of fun applications in that space, and very similar to fasteners. There's some key parameters you need to know. And then the key is making sure that you can design it repeatably and reliably. I mean, coming out of engineering school, they don't teach you how to design a fastener or how to design a spring. Just because you can draw it doesn't mean we can make it. And so that's where we're working a lot, whether it's with our distribution customers or direct with some of the OEs. So, that design piece and teaching folks what really can be done, we feel is a big part of our job. And frankly, an area, given supply chain issues we've had over the years, that I think is critically important to say, hey, you can do this, but here's the alternatives, right? Because we've run into quite a few situations over the past few years where we've had to say, hey, here's a substitution, and we'd be happy to help you, kind of sell that to your customer.
Yep, I could see that. All right, so I could go a million directions. I want to ask you about your experience out there in the field with supply chain and what kind of effects you're seeing on all the disruptions today. But I got to backtrack. You also mentioned NASCAR. You are provider, MW is providing Hyperco to NASCAR. Tell us about that. That's kind of an exciting thing. I bet your young son is very excited when you mention that.
He certainly is, Eric. And so we call them our blue spring offerings. So there's these springs are really intense in terms of the requirements, as you can imagine, with these cars demand. So we actually landed that contract a few years ago, and it's really exciting because I don't know if you know this about NASCAR, but every part in that car has to be the same or within a few options. So they only give you a few options. And I think the reason they do that, though I'm not an expert, is that they don't want any one driver getting the edge, right, on the competition. So MW is able to land that spring contract, and it's, I actually had the opportunity to go down to Daytona, and I think it was in 2022, like peak COVID. And if you can imagine, I think there were 150 to 200,000 people in the stands, no masks, just amazing. I mean, it was quite the experience. We got lots of pictures, and we had a blast. So that's the more fun part of my job for sure. Kind of some of our sexier product offerings and product lines, but Daytona 500, that was a real experience for me, especially kind of peak COVID. So
it's always nice to have a few of those really exciting products in the line to talk about. And thanks for mentioning that pocket of sanity. There were a few of them out there. I survived during that time period by hanging out at the Hillbilly Tackle Shop quite a bit, and same went there,
That's right. That's right. We got to find our people, right? And really enjoy it. So
you got to do it. Fully Threaded was there for the whole thing. All right. So getting back to sales, what are you seeing out there in the market when you're talking to people these days? Because everybody's impacted in one way or another with supply chain. And of course, you know this, Cara, but we speak to lots of distributors on the podcast. You're heavily weighted on the manufacturing side. And I'm very curious to see whether or not the market is demanding more domestically manufactured product. If that's something in your area that you're seeing, tell us about it.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's a great question. And I think, even some of our distributor partners are out there trying to find kind of that alternative, and have over the years, to your point, during COVID, all the disruption. I mean, we had tremendous amount of gap buy opportunities for many of these folks. And I'll say some of those gap buys stuck. But I think, in terms of today, 2025, there's a few things we see. I think the first is, and I think we're going to talk a little bit about it later too, but this space is consolidating, and it's consolidating quick. And I mean, frankly, there's a lot of markets out there consolidating, whether it be healthcare and so on. But one of the reasons I think that this business is consolidating is because, individuals who own these companies, really, really wonderful individuals who are kind of the backbone of the economy, frankly, private owners. And frankly, Eric, I grew up in that environment working in a private business, and there's nothing better than a family business for sure. But, the next generation is not all that interested in every case in taking over these businesses. So you're either seeing, like a selling to somebody like an MW or otherwise, frankly, or you're just seeing them, come out of the space. So I think there's actually some capacity that's being pulled out of the space that I've seen over the past few years. So it's shrinking really the overall landscape. And part of it too is I sit on a little, to your point, on the spring side where I started my career. I sit on a springboard here in Bristol, Connecticut, born and raised. I didn't make it too far, but being in small business nowadays, the costs are high, healthcare, electricity, right? So it's making it really hard for these folks to operate. So yeah, I think that's one of the things I'm seeing. I think it's creating some level of gaps in the manufacturing space, especially. I think, we are seeing some reshoring. I, certainly have to talk about that with tariffs, the dreaded tariff word. But, we are seeing some opportunities through the tariffs, and we have seen some reshoring. I think that it long term is not going to have a huge, this is just my point of view, but I don't think it's going to have a huge impact on us because I think, frankly, manufacturing here in the States has been outsourced for 30, 40 years. So bringing back all that skilled labor is really, really tricky. And it's not going to happen overnight, right? So I think there's other reasons why people are reshoring, whether it's tax benefits, they're closer to their consumers, strategic control of the supply chain. But I don't know that it's all, tariff related. I don't know how long term that's going to impact. I suppose if I did, I'd be retired on the beach somewhere. But certainly we're hearing reshoring out there. I think that absolutely continues to be a trend. And then I think the final thing that I'm hearing a little bit is about trying to find a supplier who has strong contingency planning, just because we've had so many disruptions. I mean, these parts were stuck in a port out in New York or California, not moving, right? And I think people are just looking for more and more plan Bs where they have only a plan A. So we're seeing some more opportunities there. So, I think long term, domestic manufacturing has some potential upside. I mean, especially in given markets like aerospace defense that require that domestic manufacture, which have really taken off, frankly, in the past few years. But I still see continued use of overseas sources, and I think that's strong and healthy for the competitive landscape. I think, there's good technology over there. There's been good investments. And so I think we'll see a little bit of both, right? But I think what domestic manufacturers really need to focus on, and I know what MW is focused on, is matching that investment, to the level we've seen overseas. So I think it's long overdue. And I think, it's exciting for all of us who participate in domestic manufacturing.
Well, certainly is. And I'm hearing you say that there is, if nothing else, a lot of conversation around that area. And I heard you also say that one of your doubts that it will greatly expand domestic manufacturing is due to the lack of the labor force. You've told me in the past, again, this is before we turned on the recorders, but you have this concept that you refer to as the war on talent. Is there any connection to this and that?
Most definitely, Eric. I think it's a topic that is a little taboo almost to talk about with customers, that, hey, there's an impending issue here. And
well, hang on. What if you could go, what do you mean by that term, first of all? What do you mean when you say war on talent?
I mean, we have an aging workforce, especially in domestic manufacturing, that, that could create a gap, could create a gap in the next 5, 10, certainly in 20 years time frame. And I'm saying that we're not filling the funnel of candidates up enough to deal with those that are falling out of the bottom, so to speak, right? So I think, we're all trying to convince young people, especially, to get more and more involved in skilled trades, right?
Sure,
And
sure.
I think, 30, 40 years, the past 30, we've been really focused on sending kids to college instead of educating them on all the potential opportunities to participate in the economy that can be lucrative, right? Especially a skill that frankly really commands a very high wage. I always say, if you drive down one of your manufacturer's parking lots and you see all the Ford F-150s and the Dodge Rams. I mean, you certainly have to work hard to get there. Don't get me wrong. I think that's the truth in all of our lives. But, these folks make really good careers for themselves and really good wages for themselves. And, there's a lot of stability in these places. So I think, we're all domestic manufacturers facing kind of this crisis of this aging workforce, because we've done a poor job, all of us, in educating young people on alternatives, and really, I even think about, my brother-in-law, right? He hated school, right? There's just so many other options for these young folks to go out there and get a trade. There's tech schools, right? And so we spend a lot of our time, and all of us in the associations, we talk a lot about this. And that's one topic, I think, frankly, that brings us all together, Eric, is like, hey, let's, although we're competing and all having fun with each other, here's a topic we can really work together on, which is getting into the schools, getting into sophomore, juniors, and starting to educate them on, hey, there's alternatives here. Because if we don't do a good job at that, I think, it's going to be a challenge. And I think it's the more we talk about domestic versus overseas, it's going to become more and more of a price gap that we can't overcome, if we get stuck bidding on these same associates and just kind of driving up overall wages instead of bringing in capacity into this space. So it's a tough one. It's one that, frankly, MW is doing a lot of work on. I know a lot of our competitors too. We talk a lot in the associations and otherwise, like, hey, what can we do? Because this is a topic we're all really united on. And, MW is doing some unique stuff that I love to talk about. But I think, even getting out here and talking to you about it, it's really important because we all need young people in order to continue to do what we do here.
Definitely. It almost sounds the way you're describing it that we need to do these things just to maintain. Forget about expansion. I mean, we do want to expand, don't get me wrong, but the situation we're facing right now, I think the way that you're describing it, and I've heard it from others, obviously, it's out there. We definitely need to attract younger people. Okay, so we can make all these promises and tell them that this future is ahead of them if they go the direction of, CNC, Cold Hederman, you name it. But are the things we're promising them really possible? I mean, can that life be available to them? So what is MW doing? And I got another question for you too, before you jump into that. What associations are you connected with? You've mentioned them a couple times. IFI, for one, I'm sure is one of them.
Most definitely. I mean, and because our footprint, Eric, is so broad, I mean, we're kind of all over the place. I was at the golf tournament at the NEFDA, earlier in the year here, just maybe a month or two ago. And so, we are associated with a lot of the local associations, and we try to get a lot of our local folks involved in it. But certainly IFI is a nice backbone, and we use it all the time. I speak mostly of IFI because, we send folks, especially, again, those young folks that need to be trained on the fastener world to the training all the time. So yeah, MWFA, I mean, we're all over the place. We've got quite a few because of our footprint is really so broad in terms of, Connecticut, Chicago, and all the way out to California. So.
Sure. Okay, so I split you on that one. So getting back to MW's punch list of things they're doing to address this problem.
Yeah, no, I think, a few things. I think, one of the biggest investments we've made, and there's lots of smaller things we're doing too, but one of the biggest investments we've made in the last few years that really has come to fruition mostly this year, that frankly, Eric, has kept me pretty busy, is we have a facility in Addison, Illinois, which is, as you know, Rockford, Chicagoland, really kind of the cradle of cold forming, where it was invented, and really kind of the epicenter of where a lot of the vendors are. Thankfully, we're doing business in the right place where the right existing talent is. But we made a multi-million-dollar investment in a brand new facility in Addison, Illinois. And kind of the investment thesis behind it was, hey, let's create a cold heading center of excellence that we can ensure we attract that next generation of talent. Because beyond, to your point, the financial piece, which I think cannot be overlooked, given that my husband and I just paid off our student loans at the ripe age of, 32 here a few years back. So I think that's a real thing. But I think the other thing they're looking for is a nice place to work, right? Being a nice place to work. And I think for them, that means, a clean environment that's well lit, with locker rooms, break rooms that have microwaves, all of that stuff. I mean, heck, I've been into competitors that have TVs up on the wall so folks can catch the game during lunch, right? So I think that it's some of those really fringe things that they're looking for. And I think what MW has done is really recognize that that's critical and they don't want to be working kind of in a dark shop. Now, I think there's a lot of misconceptions that manufacturing is done in a dark and dingy place. And I've had the wonderful opportunity of going to see a lot of shops, both competitors and MW shops. And that's certainly not the case. But I think, being in a state-of-the-art facility with state-of-the-art equipment and labs and measuring techniques, and, that's where young people want to be, almost kind of a CNC kind of machining environment, but more on the cold forming side. So that's been a huge investment for us. It's been a consolidation of our existing footprint as well. So prior to the Addison facility, we had 3 facilities. One was Holbrook Fasteners, one was High Performance Fasteners, and All-Star Fasteners, all within roughly 20 minutes of the Addison location. So thankfully, that really critical talent that we've been talking a lot about, we didn't, lose any of those associates just based on kind of general proximity. And that's why we chose to place the building there. But it's been a fantastic investment from my perspective. Whenever you transition and consolidate, there's always a little bit of chaos, Eric. Systems and people, and people are the hardest thing. We all know this, to change and work in new environments. So it hasn't been a perfect straight line in terms of that. But I think long term, walking young people around that facility is going to be really exciting. And so what we've done, in addition to just the investment of the facility itself, has been spending a lot of money and resources into a really strong apprenticeship program that, again, really, because I think you got to go grassroots with this stuff. I think you got to get out into community events. You got to get into the church pews. You got to get, again, with the associations, we got to get arm in arm, and we got to get out to these high schools, bring them into our shop, give them a tour, talk about the earning potential, right? Anything that attracts these young folks in. So we've spent a lot of time and resources on creating that apprenticeship program, and then, kind of a career path for these folks where you start off, as an apprentice, and then at Headerman 1, Headerman 2, Headerman 3, Rollerman 1, so on and so forth. So, really saying, hey, once you get up to 4 or 5, you're probably running multiple machines and you're making a lot, more money, which is great. And you're doing some of the harder stuff. You're doing the multi-die applications. You got to go from a single die to a multi-die, right? So that's what we've been spending a lot of our time on. And I think it's paid off. And frankly, Addison is one example, but really throughout our portfolio, it's all about getting out to these folks and making these investments so that we are kind of state of the art and we can attract young people. I've got one more example for you, and then I'll stop talking here. But we've got a great location, Ohio Rod Products, out in Versailles, Indiana, and the general manager over there, Mike Hughes, who has been with us for 30 years. I mean, really, really great guy. He had a baseball field built right next to his facility. And the idea was find ways to get your family involved in the community and involved in the shop, right? And then bringing the kids, saying, hey, dad works next door, mom works next door, right? So it's a brilliant way really to introduce kids early. And it's some of those kind of intangible things that this younger generation really seems to care about.
Wow, there's a lot there. Yeah. I would like to do a segment with somebody from MW who's really super focused on that whole apprenticeship program, because I think that idea is something that needs to be nurtured. It needs to be grown. And I think there's probably people out in the audience who have young people in their world, be it their kids or somebody they know, somebody in their family, somebody they know, and there's lots of them, and they're looking down the road. They don't know what they're going to do, and they would be attracted to something that looks worthwhile. So we should talk about this some more. Thanks for presenting all that. And by the way, folks, you want to get more about what's going on at MW, what Kara's talking about, there's so much there. It's mwcomponents.com. you rattled off all these names, and I'd kind of forgotten about the big Elgin acquisition. I think that happened back in 23. Let's see, there was Ideal Fasteners sometime back. They were FCH members. USA Fasteners, they were FCH members. I mean, there have been so many that you've rolled into you call it a portfolio, and MW Components is just a monster.
It's fun though. It has this nice kind of balance where, not in every case, I think, can the owners, Eric, work in the business because, it's your baby, right? And you raise your baby a certain way and someone comes in and it's hard to see, hey, but I raised my kid this way all these years and it's hard to do anything different. But in many cases, we have a lot of owners in the business still present and working in the business, which is really fun. Like we've got one guy, Kirk Tyndall, who sold us his business down in Houston, Texas, 2015, I think it was, and still in the business. So, Fagundo Quiroga out in Ideal Fasteners, who's been kind of grown up in the business as I have, and who's still in the business as a general manager. So, it's really neat to see some of these folks really thrive within it. And, MW's been super fortunate to buy some really fantastic outfits, especially to your point, like an Ideal Fasteners. And it's been fun. It's kind of a salesperson's dream because the product offering never really gets stale. We're talking to our customers a lot about like, hey, where's your pain points? And, how can we help solve those, either through bringing in some of the technology ourselves or kind of acquiring it. And there's just so many wonderful businesses. It's a real testament to, this space that we all play in, that, there's some folks that make some incredible investment in this space, and it's worthwhile to kind of combine those forces. So it's really fun. It's again, you get stuck in it and you just, you're glutton for punishment. You don't ever want to leave.
Well, it gets in your blood. It's well known. And it is a testament to the kind of company that you're running, that so many of the original owners are still there. And I can totally see how it would be a fantastic environment for an energetic and ambitious sales-minded person to really test their limits and do what they want to do. And that's exactly what you're doing, Kara. I sure do appreciate it. Your energy bubbles over, and we could go on forever. But I want to ask you this before we close this conversation out. I know our time is limited. How did you get to me? I'm not surprised by this, but how did you find Marty Nolan in this whole labyrinth of companies and everything? Because you mentioned him, and I got a smile on my face.
The infamous, I can tell you, in my sales career, I have never met somebody who knows so many people in this industry, Eric. Whenever I need to get to somebody, Marty is the first guy I call. So, Marty hooked us up, and this was just really an awesome time to meet. I know he brings lots of folks together in this business, many, many years. And like I say, I rely on Marty for so much, calling him, hey, what's going on with this? Tell me what's the latest. And, when I get stuck with things, we're super fortunate to have kept him. To your point, we acquired him through the Elgin acquisition, which was really a fun thing. And I don't know, he's stuck with us ever since. MW is not a perfect company. We talked a lot about the good stuff, and there's no perfect organization, that's for sure. And Marty's been patient and kind with us. And so and we've got a whole network of some other reps that we utilize really, who are very well known and connected. And we're super lucky to have just good people. It makes it part of the fun, that's for sure. But the infamous Marty Nolan, I mean, God knows how he knows so many people. It's like a full-time job, all his networking he does.
Yeah, one of a kind. All right. So he rolled in through Elgin, not surprised by that. And you're right. The M&A business is filled with successes, and anybody who says that there's a company out there with a perfect track record out there of smooth transition is just 100% not telling you the truth.
Most definitely.
All right, Kara, I said that we're going to do this again, and we are. I definitely want to talk more about the apprenticeship program that you mentioned. And anytime you want to talk about what's going on out there, what's important, so glad to have MW Components on the FTR team.
Thank you so much, Eric, for having me and for your listenership, for even flipping the radio on. So appreciate it.
Since 1905, Buckeye Fasteners and the Ohio Nut and Bolt Company have been supplying the world with high-quality fasteners. Our standard product lines include weld fasteners, braided weld screws, leg levelers, self-clinching hardware, clevis pins, rivet nuts, and various other fastener lines, allowing us to support virtually all types of industries. BuckeyeFasteners.com. Buckeye Fasteners, more than just weld.
Solution Man, Ken.
Solution Man, you're my fastener hero.
Just doing my job, ma'am.
SOLUTION, SOLUTION. Solution Industries. We are Solution.
Hi, this is Alan Weitzman with JC Sales and Rivet. Visit us for all your rivet needs on www.rivetsonline.com. You are listening to Fully Threaded Radio.
And we're back, and it's the news segment. Always headlines. Mike McNulty, he's focused on them. And of course, he'll be bringing us the latest FDI news. A lot of suspense there if you haven't seen that report yet. Hey, no suspense on what's going on at the NFDA yet, because announcement just came out of that. They elected their new board of directors, and the president of the National Fastener Distributors Association for the next year is none other than Ed Smith. He, of course, senior strategic sourcing manager over there at Worth Industry USA. He's here now. Hey, Ed.
Hey, good afternoon, Eric. How are you?
Doing outstanding. Congratulations on your bump up to president of the NFDA. Wow.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I really appreciate the kind words, and I'm very humbled to be sitting in the spot where I am with as many notable names in the fastener business, leading the charge here and setting the stage for me to be able to come in and try to put my mark on it.
Yeah, and I want to hear what your mark is going to be or what you're kind of envisioning at this point. But when you look back in history and the list of names who have been president of the NFDA, like you said, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it was quite interesting. I mean, I've reviewed the list, a few times here, leading up to kind of knowing what was coming. And, it was brought up in one of our past presidents meetings just last week. And, it's really like looking at a family tree. You've got so many just legendary, family names in the business, and, generations of folks that have led the charge. So again, extremely humbled to be able to sit in this chair and, again, do what I can to keep moving things forward and, be a part of something great.
Well, you've put your time in, let's say it that way. When you and I first started talking, I'm pretty sure it was probably at a PacWest event, and you were with Timberline at the time. That's going back a few years, Ed. But you've done a lot of roles for a lot of associations, so this is your crack. What is the Ed Smith agenda for the NFDA going to be? What's front and center for you guys this time?
I think for us, and again, it's really, not a whole lot of different than what we've kind of had in the past. What's member value? How do we continue to increase the member value and, really help the membership get the most out of, what they're a part of, whether that's through various trainings or some of our various task force that we have put together. One thing I do want to plug, if I can, is coming out of our strategic planning meeting a few years ago, we put together a task force to kind of come up with professional resources, if you will. And looking at our strategic plan a few years ago, when we sat down and said, what do we want to do over the next few years? One of the brainchilds that came out of that was really looking at our workforce and saying, hey, how can we best try to help develop some of these guys that they don't know what training they need? They don't know what they don't know what they don't know, right? So what we came up with was an area on our website that's hosted out at the NFDA website where you can go in, and learn at your leisure. If it's a warehouse personnel that wants to make their way into purchasing or sales or accounting, if you will, we've developed some links out there. And really, it's anything from an entry level type of person on up to mid level. And the goal of it is to just give them an area to start. Right? You don't necessarily know what you're looking for, but once you find this website, you're going to be able to figure out the skills that you need, and it's going to really help direct you. There is some, a lot of free information out there, but there's also some paid links as well. But yeah, we find this is something that's very valuable for some newer entries into the business for sure.
Yeah, I love that. I'm a big supporter of also the idea of helping distributors get more of their bench people to the shows and to the association meetings, the regionals and everything, and allowing anybody avenues for professional development seems like a great idea. The NFDA should be spearheading that. So good job. Looking forward to seeing what you come up with.
Absolutely. Yeah, and on that topic as well, we've looked a lot at what are our events and how can we be a little bit more inclusive for our events. It's just maybe it's not just for the executives, but for the next generation of leaders. We need a strong future. We need to welcome and invest in the people who are going to shape it going forward.
Right on. Okay, so since we are going to try and do a pretty quick segment here, I'm going to move us right to something completely opposite from what we just talked about. That's your big event coming up in October, which it's going to be a little more on the exclusive side. That is happening down there in Key West, and it's your annual executive retreat. Wow, what a powerhouse event you guys have set up down there.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. We're anticipating some good weather. So hopefully no issues coming up there. And I say that tongue in cheek. So please give us some good vibes for weather in October for us for that event. But right now that one's turning out to be good education. We've got some people coming in talking about the QBQ, the question behind the question, for some leadership type training. Then we've got a couple of good panel discussions. Don't get me wrong. I think panel discussions can be great or they can be not so great. But I think it all comes back to what are the topics, what are the hot buttons in industry, and I think right now we've got a few that are pretty good that should lead to a really good panel discussion. So we're certainly looking forward to hopefully seeing a lot of people out in Key West come October.
All right, that event is happening October 15th through the 17th. Get out to nfda-fastener.org. That's the website. Got some time on this one, but you might want to start making your plans now. That's after Vegas this year. So Ed Smith is the new president of the NFDA. Who's the rest of the board?
The board of directors for 2025-2026, Stephen Drasik from Brighton Best International, Lisa Breton from DB Roberts, Scott Camp from Atlas Distribution, Alex Goldberg, AMPG, Scott Longfellow with Hewitt, Melissa Patel from Field Fasteners, Angela Philippart from AFC, Christian Reich of Gobel Fasteners, Jennifer Sturm of Empire Bolt. And the officers that were elected, really happy to have such a good, engaged group of distributors. But Melissa Patel is now the vice president for NFDA, and Christian Reich is serving a second term as the associate chair, and Scott McDaniel as the immediate past president. They're really passionate and engaged, and looking forward to serving alongside with this group for the next year and into the immediate past presidency.
All right, outstanding. Yeah, Scott, had a lot of fun talking with him about various NFDA events over the past year. Geez, these terms fly by. You ever think about expanding it to 2 years?
I think we're good with 1 year for now, but we'll see. We'll see.
Probably asked you at the wrong time in your term, but seems like it from an outsider. Well, we'll reconvene here in just a second. Ed, I want to point out to everybody that the news is coming up, and for many years, it's been sponsored by Volt Industrial Plastics, makers of the world's finest plastic fasteners. Of course, the title sponsors of Fully Threaded Radio, Brighton Best International, Gobel Fasteners, and Star Stainless. Got to pay those bills, Ed, and I know that you can appreciate that.
Oh, yeah, I do appreciate all our sponsors for everything.
Of course, Worth Industry USA, also a strong supporter of many things across the industry, including the Fully Threaded podcast for a long time. And you are the senior strategic, I don't know if I got that title right the first time, senior manager of strategic sourcing. That's a mouthful, but it's a big job, isn't it?
It is. And, as we continue to integrate the various Worth Industry USA companies into one here, it definitely becomes tougher and tougher, every day, just navigating the seas of supplier announcements, tariff challenges, steel pricing, just there's not a dull day any longer in the seat that I sit in right now. That's for sure.
I can imagine a lot of big headlines coming up. Of course, we had Chapman on last episode, and we always talk to Worth people to take the pulse. Just generally, tariffs is still pretty much the top of your agenda in terms of managing sourcing these days. Is that a fair idea?
I think it is fair. It's something that we're definitely keeping our eye on, and looking at different areas of some reshoring, some more nearshoring, looking at other countries that are becoming more and more viable for various supplies on different commodity products. But yeah, definitely tariffs is probably the big pain point in our business today. I would say that is true.
Well, I look forward to getting you back on the podcast at some point in the future when the smoke clears on that, because I know you've got tons of insights. So good luck to you until then.
Eric, I appreciate it.
And I'm going to pass it off to you right now because you have one more duty to fulfill as we head into the news. Ed Smith is the new president of the NFDA. He, of course, with Worth Industry USA. Ed, it's all yours.
Now, with news about screws you can use, here's Mike McNulty.
Thanks, Ed. This is Mike McNulty from Fastener Technology International Magazine, bringing you the Fastener News Report, which is sponsored by Volt Industrial Plastics, makers of the world's finest plastic fasteners. The Constitutional Republic of the United States of America is now in the first days of its 250th year of independence, and semi-quincentennial may eventually be a household word as more than 340 million people have less than 1 year to prepare for the July 4th, 2026 America 250th birthday bash to remember, but I am still focused on fasteners and ready to deliver today's Fastener News Report. In this episode, Baird Senior Research Analyst Dave Manthe joins us to reveal the latest results of the Fastener Distributor Index, also known as the FDI. Also in today's broadcast, we have our top story from the National Fastener Distributors Association, plus newsmaker headlines from Unbraco, Hewitt, AFC, Boomax, Brainerd Rivet, McLean Fogg, 3Q, Suncor Stainless, Linfast Solution Groups, Autoboat USA, and more. On the back page report, we're going to talk about the top fastener distributors in the USA. We'll get to all of that and the latest FDI results right after this.
Hey there, fastener distributors. This is Heidi Voltrauer from Volt Industrial Plastics. As a fellow fastener industry business, Volt knows you are always on the lookout for ways to help your customer while keeping costs in check. So, why not plastic? Listen, there's no argument that metal fasteners have to be used for certain applications, but when strength isn't the primary concern, why not explore the saving benefits of plastic? You not only save your company money, but also pass those savings on to your valued customers. It's as easy as picking up the phone or sending a quick email. Our team at Volt makes sourcing easy, and we look forward to helping you find exactly what you need when you need it. So, for all of your plastic fastener needs, you know the website, voltplastics.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, start your engine! Get ready to race ahead with Eurolink's time-tested fast, faster, and fastest freight options. Need it fast? Eurolink delivers. Need it faster? We'll shift into overdrive. Eurolink's fastest service has products at the finish line in a flash. Eurolink drives circles around our competition, providing turbocharged precision delivery for 25 years and counting. You can sit in the pits with no quotes or contact Eurolink's team to win the supply chain showdown. Stay in the race. Get hard-to-find metric fasteners delivered with Eurolink. Fast, faster, and fastest.
This is Tough Nutter Jake Valdez Davis here, and when I'm not training for the upcoming Tough Mudder race this August, I'm grabbing some Yubo Blend coffee and heading out to the next Fastener Association meeting. BTM Manufacturing is going to have a busy 2025, and I'm looking forward to seeing everyone. Train hard, or not. See you in August.
You're listening to Mike McNulty's Fastener News Report on Fully Threaded Radio.
The seasonally adjusted Fastener Distributor Index for June 2025 rose to 52.0 after posting a solid 50.4 reading in May, seasonally adjusted. This was the fourth reading above 50 out of the last 5. The forward-looking indicator, also known as the FLI, tumbled last month to 47.4, down from 50.2 in May, the fifth time in 6 months of being below 50. Fastener Distributor Index data is collected and analyzed by the FCH Sourcing Network and Baird. The FDI seeks to identify demand, pricing, and outlook trends within the American fastener distribution industry. To get some insight into these results, we're going to talk to Baird Senior Research Analyst Dave Manthe. Hi, Dave. Thanks for joining us on the Fastener News Report.
Hi, Mike. Thanks for having me, as always.
It's good to have you back. What do you think about the latest FDI results?
Well, we've been range bound is how I would think about it. And this month, no different. We've been bouncing around that 50 break point, which, again, as a reminder to the listeners, if it's the reading on the index is above 50, that signals expansion, and then sub 50 is contraction. So the FDI in June was signaling just a bit of expansion like it did in May. The FLI has been primarily below 50, so signaling sort of a mixed bag of outlooks there. And again, just a little bit below 50 there as well. I don't know that it's shocking given the readings we've seen year to date. And frankly, over the past 18 months, if you'll allow me, Mike, I went back and did a little analysis here that if you look back to the start of the survey, which was 2012 is how far we have data going back. And it's been a while.
You shocked me with that.
Yeah. And if you think about the range of outcomes in a given year, so the maximum and the minimum reading on the FDI in a given year, that it tends to obviously have a range, a dispersion throughout the year. But what's really interesting is over the past 1.5 years, so the past 18 months since January of 2024, the average has been 51.7. But what's interesting is the range, so the high and low around that is an 11.3 point band. So the max was 56.7, the min 45.4. But to think about that, so it's ranged just a little bit over 11 points. In over 13 years of this survey, with the exception of 2016, which was a little bit tighter than that, this is the tightest band that we've had besides 2016. So I put that in the context of some of the commentary, which I'm sure we'll talk about. And also, when you talk to investors and participants in the industry, everyone talks about, of course, the tariffs, which I'm sure, again, we'll get to, Mike. But the word you hear from everybody is that there's all this sort of confusion, and there's this volatility, and it's uncertainty is one of the key phrases we hear quite a bit. And in the midst of all of that, the FDI has really ranged in this relatively tight band around kind of flatness. So I would just point that out when people come to you and say, well, we don't know because it's these unprecedented, uncertain times. I would remind them there's no doubt about it, but we've seen this before. Every time is uncertain. Point to a time in the past when we could raise our hand and say, yep, we've got everything figured out.
Happen, right.
Everything's going to happen just the way we think it will. So I just thought I'd point that out, Mike, just in terms of the range, very tight, but again, just hovering around that flat area, which is consistent with industrial production and ISM and a lot of the other economic indicators right
and
now.
You're saying the last time it was this tight was in 16?
2016, yes.
Yeah, and we're far enough away from the pandemic days and everything. So good. So yeah, that's good insight to add to the mix. And let's jump into some of the numbers. Looks like sales and inventories all improved. Employment dropped, and pricing was fairly stable, with the year to year being about almost exactly the same, and month to month going down slightly. Any insights on those numbers there?
Yeah, I think as it relates to all of those items, when you think about pricing in particular, there's still confusion out there in terms of what pricing should look like or does look like, how the tariffs stack, whether they do, which tariffs apply. And then, of course, there's always the question about if the tariffs that we have today are going to apply tomorrow, or if there'll be different ones. So there's a lot of confusion around pricing. And because of that, I think when we think about inventory levels and demand levels and so forth, I think these things are all intertwined. It is this point in time where we're seeing relative flatness. We're not seeing what we call in the market the animal spirits of people feeling like they want to invest and they want to be aggressive in terms of capex or growth. And I think that is because of, again, going back to that uncertainty. But really, in what we're talking about here, it's not just the overall environment or the economy in general. We're literally talking about how much these things cost, how much they'll cost tomorrow, what we should be charging, how much we should have on hand, should we be heavy or light, that sort of thing. So I think when we look at all of that data, none of it is really all that surprising, particularly relative to the commentary we heard from respondents this month.
Yeah, and the biggest jump this month, actually, number-wise, was sales. And then when we get to the comments, there were some people said they had great months, others not so great. But the sales number, I'm looking back. I'm just looking at the summary chart. It's the highest sales number on the chart here. So
Yeah, so when we get to this time of the year, sales can obviously be volatile. There's ebb and flow of the construction cycle depending on weather to some extent.
Vacation.
There's shutdowns. Yeah, exactly, around the 4th of July and where the holidays fall and if there's shutdowns and things like that. So, but having said that, we have gotten good commentary from a number of people that June was very strong. And having said that, some of the commentary is maybe less positive toward the back half of the year. But again, if we do get some clarity on a few of these items, I'm very positive about 2025 and into 2026. It feels like we've sort of been just chipping along here in terms of these readings and the economy in general. And if we look at investment and maybe some deferred investment and some capital spending that should be ahead of us, not to mention reshoring, manufacturing has been a huge boom here in the United States. So it seems like there's a lot of things that are positive that if people could just wrap their heads around what the future looked like for the next 3, 6, 12 months, I think we could really see a nice release of that and an acceleration in the underlying manufacturing economy.
Yeah, well, that's good to hear. I look forward to that. The other numbers we have the 6-month outlook. It got a little bit more bullish. We had 41% of respondents expecting things to be better 6 months down the road, 38 the same, and only 22 thinking it's going to be worse. So that's probably what maybe helped the FDI as well as the sales.
Right. That put me in that bucket too. And that'd be a positive for the FLI as well. So as we're looking at that leading indicator, the things that would lead to a higher FLI would be rising employment, positive 6-month outlook, and then low inventories both at the customer and respondent level in anticipation that when things get better, those inventories would be needed to be built up. Therefore, that's going to lead to a surge in demand. And of course, the 6-month outlook is what it is. And employment is a bit of a longer term decision. We assume that people aren't just hiring people with a plan of firing them next month. So if they see things getting better and they truly believe that, you should see a rising employment indicator as well.
Also, it's not directly related to the FDI or the FLI, but the ISM PMI for manufacturing inched up a little bit to 49.0, still staying below 50, but it's been below 50 for a long time, except for February when it jumped over. But moving back a little bit higher. Any take on that?
Yeah, I think it's a continuation of the theme that we have seen over the past almost 3 years now, which is just nothing terrible in terms of the ISM rolling off a cliff. And of course, as you mentioned, really not popping above 50 with the exception of a month or two, depending on adjustments. So yeah, so I think it's reflective of the same kind of environment we're seeing through the survey that we do together and other economic data is just that we're in a very flat industrial production, very flat manufacturing environment, which is what gives me hope that if there's one thing I know about Americans, they're optimistic. And given time, if we sit here and do nothing for a few years, eventually people are going to decide that it's time to invest, it's time to take a risk, and I think we're getting close to that.
Good. Anything else on the numbers before we jump into the comments?
Yeah, I wish I had some more exciting news for you on the numbers, but it sure seems like when you look at them, it's got a landscape that looks kind of like the topography of Florida here. It's just the flat land and not many peaks, not many valleys, but hopefully we'll see some improvement. As we pointed out, there's a few positive signals that maybe things over the next 6 to 12 months start to look a little bit better. And again, hopefully some of that economic data turns up.
All right. Well, I guess if you're talking to runners or bikers, they're okay with flat.
Yeah.
So maybe that's okay for industrial numbers as well. All right, let's move on to the comments, and we're gonna go through these, and you can jump in with commentary on the comments as you see fit. But tariffs were the dominant theme again in the June comments. But we'll start off with a few comments related to sales reports, which were mixed, but maybe more on the positive side. So the first one is through the first 6 months of 2025, our sales are up over 50% over 2024. And another comment, quarter two is closing well. And then on the other side of the coin, we've got two here. One says booking seems to be slow. Several customers have July shutdown scheduled and ho-hum sales in June. So again, those two balance each other out to make it flat, right?
It seems that way, and I do think that when I think about the sentiment that we heard, it seems like the quarter ended well. The June quarter was pretty solid, but as was mentioned here, maybe there's some shutdowns around the July holidays, the Independence Day, and maybe a little bit more caution as it relates to the back half. I would point out it's never perfect, and I know I'm in the prediction business, and I know you're lucky if you're right 51% of the time, but people voicing caution about the back half of the year is pretty standard. And we'll see what happens from here. I'm not saying that I see things that are flashing green across the board, and I can definitively say things are going to get better. It just feels like we've been in this holding pattern for long enough. Maybe there's still some near-term zigs and zags in terms of a weak July, or maybe the back half doesn't quite materialize. But yeah, you can only keep this thing down for so long, and I think eventually we'll return to growth.
Okay, we got another comment here that is kind of sales related. It says, seems like last month's jump equals this month's scale back. So that contributes more to the balancing act. And then end user demand remains sluggish. The June 4th tariffs precipitating another price increase. And then as we move on, it's 100% tariffs here. So here we go. Tariffs continue to burn time and are now more confusing than ever. Customs is very slow to clear products, and brokers don't fully understand the rules. All in all, chaos. The next one, there are at least 2 to 3 differing opinions on how to calculate the 310, 232, and whether or not to stack on IEEPA. End quote. What is IEEPA?
I do not know, Mike.
Okay. Well, that makes two of us. So something to do with tariff calculations. But as you alluded to, it's confusing. And how do you price these things properly?
Well, it stands for International Emergency Economic Powers Act.
Oh yeah, that's the act that they're using for the to justify the, I'll say, unconstitutional tariffs.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that acronym before, but it's related to exactly what we're talking about here.
Yeah, I know what that is. That's what they're using as the emergency that one person can declare the tariffs, whatever he or she wants, depending on their mood for the day, which it's just ridiculous, but it is what it is, I guess.
But I think the theme here, and when this respondent, the first one said all in chaos, I for sure that's what we're hearing from people. And what's interesting is there's a theory out on Wall Street that people are trying to figure out, was there some sort of a pull forward ahead of tariffs on certain goods? And across my coverage list, I really haven't seen that. And I think not the least of which reason is that there is this confusion about, would we Would we pull forward something in anticipation of the price going higher? Well, if everybody else is sourcing from the same area, is that the right move? Or if there's alternate sources, people are, I think over the past several years, since COVID in particular, at least the public companies have been very focused on adjusting their supply chains and trying to get them closer to the US, some of that reshoring because of the dislocation we had in the supply chains during COVID. But all in, I think there's no one answer. And then we're talking about literally hundreds of thousands or millions of different products. Many of them, fasteners maybe not the same, but there's many of these products would have fasteners as an input or would be finished goods that have many different parts to them. It really creates a lot of confusion. And so whether or not it's happening in other areas of the economy, I don't know. But what I can tell you is in the industrial and building products distributors that I cover, I would be very hard pressed to come up with anyone that has said they've pulled forward any kind of inventory or purchased ahead of what they thought was a looming tariff at all.
Yeah, it could backfire. Okay, next comment says tariffs and interest rates have affected our customer spending since February 1, 2025, and we are holding back on major infrastructure purchases because of tariffs and cost increases. The thing that jumps out to me is the interest rates, and I read something recently that in terms of government spending, interest payments has reached number 3 on the list, as with Social Security and Medicare, Medicaid being number 1 and 2, and now interest payments moved up the ladder. That's maybe a longer term issue, but
for sure. And I guess they must have they jumped ahead of defense spending, which we know isn't going down anytime soon.
Yeah.
I think part of there's jawboning from the White House regarding short rates and the Fed funds rate, which may have an impact. And I don't want to get too political or pontificate here on rates. It's really, I'm an equities guy. It's outside of my direct realm of responsibility here. But I think if people are interested in what's going on with the broader economy and how the fixed income market is viewing the current situation, it's the 10-year. You look at the 10-year, which today is 4.43%. And that sort of what is essentially a long treasury now, because I don't think we issue 30-year treasuries anymore. But when you look at that 10-year, that's essentially what drives mortgage rates. And that's a big part of that longer duration economy. Short rates, sure. If you're borrowing as a company, or if you're borrowing maybe for a non-residential project, potentially that short rate could have an impact. And then the final point would be on the federal spending. One way to keep that down is, of course, if short rates are down and we're able to issue treasuries at a much lower short-term rate, it solves half the problem because it takes a little bit of pressure off near term. But to go in the Wayback Machine, I sure wish we were issuing 100-year bonds back when interest rates were 0. That would have been the smart thing to do. But, it's Washington. They're going to do what they're going to do.
Yeah, and you mentioned spending, and nobody's going to stop spending until it breaks. But that's down the road, I guess, outside of the time frame we're talking about right now. So next comment, we got a couple on the 232. Due to Section 232 tariffs, cost of goods is about 50% on average higher than year versus year. And then that ties back to the first comment where somebody said their sales are up over 50%. So maybe it's just a price increase. Section 230. Go ahead.
I was going to say that we certainly hear price increases spun as mostly positive by the companies that we cover as distributors, because most of these companies, in fact, the vast majority of them, they don't just pass through the price increase. They pass through the price increase trying to maintain their gross margin. So they're able to leverage their operating expense better and therefore be more profitable in a rising price environment. So I do think those things are intertwined. As far as that 50%, the good news, I guess, is that if you're building a fire truck, fasteners are a relatively small component of that. But what you do have to worry about is everything else. So if all the other steel components and the other commodities are also up in value, that can lead to demand destruction, which is the number one concern out here, I think, today. Not focused on fasteners, of course, which are low dollar amount in most cases, but the broader impact of tariffs and on the demand destruction picture.
All right, the other Section 232 has caused uncertainty in pricing parts. Demand overall remains strong otherwise. Then we got two more comments. The second last one is we are expecting to see supply chain issues in the next several months through the end of the year. And then the last one says, quote, while things are trending back up, the tariff-related trade war will ultimately cause our economy to tank. History doesn't lie. Those who don't learn from the past are doomed to repeat it, end quote. So that's the most fiery one. So what do you think?
Yeah, that is what it is. We'll see how things play out. The good news right now, and of course the final score is not on the board at this time, but even though GDP was down 0.5% in the first quarter, the Atlanta Fed puts out a forecast they call the GDP Now forecast. It's looking for second quarter GDP to be up 2.6%, and that GDP was up 2.4 in the fourth quarter of 2024. So, there is a lot of hand wringing about all this, believe me, and you're right. And some of these comments certainly talking about the back half of the year, which is important. But I think, at least in the near term, we haven't seen the most dire of situations relative to tariffs yet. And I know some of these haven't even taken effect yet, and we'll see how things go. But so far, thankfully, we haven't done that much damage to the economy, apparently.
Good. Hopefully it stays that way. Good. Before we move on, I'll let you talk a little bit about Baird and what's going on there, and anything else you want to add on the FDI or the FLI comments, numbers, anything like that.
No, I think we're in good shape. Yeah, things at Baird are great. We're happy. I on a personal note, I just celebrated my 30th anniversary with the company,
nice.
And really couldn't be happier with the situation. It's a great firm.
30 years.
My
Good
career,
for you.
yeah, it's been fantastic. Yeah, thank you.
And do they do anything special for 30-year anniversary? So give you a LinkedIn post, say attaboy.
Yeah, I'd like to say there's a gold watch, but there was a range of gifts I could choose from, and I chose a Dyson vacuum cleaner, so that's
that's the practicality in you, right?
That's it. Yeah.
Oh, well, that's good. Yeah, it's good. And so 30 years at Baird, and then as the listeners obviously should know that you guys have been producing the FDI FLI report. So we really appreciate that and all the time that goes into it, and staying the course with the fastener industry.
Here too, been a great partnership. Always happy to do it. It's great to talk to you guys, and it's fantastic information for our clients. And I know you guys also turn that back to participants and others. So it's a really great relationship. Thank you.
Definitely, you're welcome. Then thanks to Eric and Brian too, who have been the leading forces on it, leading the charge. So on an anecdote story, I attend a trade show in Milwaukee every year. For the wire harness industry, and the new Baird Center there used to be the Milwaukee Convention Center. Now it's the Baird Center. They've completed it, and the show we were in was moved into one of the new halls. And I have to say, I don't know if you've seen it, but it's just spectacular. Really good venue for trade shows and conferences. So really, job well done there, and I know you guys had a big part in it.
Yeah, thank you. It's exciting.
Anything else you want to touch on before we wrap it up?
Usually we talk a little bit about the public companies.
Oh yeah,
here.
Fastenal. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. So the data point that we have. MSC did report, and the numbers were still, like we've been talking about, flattish, slightly down, not seeing much improvement. Fastenal, on the other hand, their May daily sales were up 9.3%, and actually a couple of points above what seasonality would say is normal for the month. I think that's maybe a little bit out of character relative to the ISM. It is consistent with an FDI that's 50 plus, but probably a little bit better. If you look at the historical relationship, that might be a little bit better. Fastenal is doing some company-specific things that may be driving some of that, some of their vending and on-site and that sort of thing. And as we look forward, and again, that optimism that I've been talking about, we're looking for June to be up nearly 10% on organic daily sales growth for Fastenal. So again, that's slightly better than normal seasonality based on our optimism for the economy as we move forward. But also what we talked about earlier, Mike, which is further price gains from tariffs. And of course, that's predicated on those price increases and other components of that manufacturers are taking in don't lead to that demand destruction. But if they don't, if manufacturers can either share those or somehow pass those along to customers, there's not too much demand destruction. This bit of inflation we're seeing here in the industrial economy should be good for everyone, but that's the balancing act, and really the litmus test here is, I think, over the next 6 to 12 months, we'll see how it plays out.
So you're alluding to, that tariffs can have a positive impact on sales, which might lead to a positive impact on GDP. So maybe that in the short term. So maybe that's part of the method and the madness. I don't know.
Well, let's hope so. Yeah.
All right. Good. Well, like I said, we appreciate the partnership and you guys doing all the number crunching and analysis for the FDI and FLI numbers. Appreciate you coming onto the show and talking about it.
My pleasure, Mike. Always great to hear your voice and to get in front of your audience here. So really happy to do it, and we'll look forward to talking again soon.
Same here. That was Baird Senior Research Analyst Dave Manthey. The FDI number for June 2025 was 52.0 versus 50.4 in May. Visit FDIsurvey.com to participate in the process and get a detailed PDF copy of Baird's monthly analysis. Now for today's top story. As you heard earlier, Ed Smith of Worth Industry USA was elected as the 2025-2026 President of the National Fastener Distributors Association, also known as the NFDA. Melissa Patel of Field will serve as Vice President, Christian Reich of Gobel Fasteners will continue as Associate Chair, and Scott McDaniel of Martin Fastening Solutions will remain on the board as immediate past President. Lisa Breton of DB Roberts, Scott Camp of Atlas Distribution Services, and Jennifer Sturm of Empire Bolt and Screw were elected to serve on the Board of Directors effective June 11, 2025. Continuing on the NFDA board are Steve Andrasik of Brighton Best International, Alex Goldberg of AMPG, Scott Longfellow of Hewitt, and Angela Philippart of AFC Industries. The NFDA gave recognition to retiring board members Gigi Calfee of Copper State Bolt and Nut, Jim Degnan of S.W. Anderson, and Jake Glazer of Schierick Fastening Solutions. Later this year, the 2025 NFDA Executive Summit will take place on October 15th to 17th at the Casa Marina Resort in Key West, Florida, offering 3 days of learning from industry experts, connecting with fastener friends old and new, and soaking up the Florida sunshine. Registration for this event opens July 15th at www.nfda-fastener.org. Next up, today's Fastener Newsmaker headlines. In corporate news, Signature Engineered Solutions was selected as a North American distributor for Unbraco fasteners. FDH Aero formed FDH Hardware, a unified division comprising its 5 legacy hardware brands. Aeromed Group announced a new strategic partnership with Consolidated Aerospace Manufacturing, also known as CAM, a Stanley Black & Decker company. Hewitt expanded its manufacturing operations by adding 2 new state-of-the-art Swith lathes. AFC Industries acquired Kavanaugh Government Group, also known as CGG. Bumax strengthened its market presence in Turkey by forming a new strategic agreement with Standard Savada. Whitecap closed its acquisition of Advanced Fastening Supply, also known as AFS. Brainerd Rivet upgraded its packaging process with a fully automated start-to-finish system. And Barry McLean, chairman of McLean Fogg, was selected as a 2025 inductee in the Illinois Manufacturing Hall of Fame. In personnel news, Linfash Solutions Group, also known as LSG, named Mike Spencer as Chief Executive Officer. 3Q Incorporated announced Ellie Madeline as a new Managing Director. Blackhawk Industrial named John Ahrens Chief Financial Officer. TriMas appointed Thomas J. Snyder President and Chief Executive Officer. Suncor Stainless welcomed Dave Doherty as its new Associate Product Manager. Distribution Solutions Group appointed Barry Litwin CEO of its Test Equity Group. And Diana Barnes joined Autoboat USA as Sales Operations and Marketing Manager. You can get details on all of these stories and more in Fastener Technology International Magazine and the Fastener News Report monthly newsletter, both available online at fastenertech.com. Now let's turn to the back page to talk about the top fastener distributors in the USA. Mike Hockett, Executive Editor at Modern Distribution Management, also known as MDM, reports, quote, "Our highly anticipated annual feature is now available to view and download. Explore our 20 different lists to see distribution's biggest movers and shakers. After countless hours spent scouring over spreadsheets, a sea of emails, and a plethora of web page testing, MDM's 2025 Top Distributors feature is now live online." Hockett gave thanks to the sponsors of this year's renditions, which are SAP, BigCommerce, and Epicor, for their support and everything they do to support the wholesale distribution industry. Distribution enthusiasts can now peruse the complete list of more than 200 distributors at www.mdm.com/top_distributors. The list provides a clear snapshot of who's who in the distribution industry, presenting the top players in general and across several different product sectors. One of those sectors is fasteners, and based on 2024 revenues, MDM identifies the top fastener distributors in the USA. The top 5 in order are Fastenal Company, Worth Industry USA, the Hillman Group, McMaster-Carr, and MSC Industrial Supply. The next 5 rounding out the top 10 are Boeing Distribution, AFC Industries, Optimus Solutions, Endries International, and Applied Industrial Technologies. Coming in at numbers 11 through 15 are Distribution Solutions Group, EFC International, Bassard Americas, W.W. Grainger, and Copper State Bolt and Nut. And the last 5 in the top 20 are Motion, Field Fastener, Incora, Bisco Industries, and Kimball Midwest. You can find information on MDM's other 19 sectors of distribution coverage, including building materials, electronics, fluid power, industrial supplies, plastics, plumbing, and specialty adhesive, as well as details on its ranking methodology online on the MDM website. Congratulations to the companies that made MDM's top 20 this year, as well to those other smaller, uncelebrated ones flying under the radar and fighting for and filling fastener orders day after day. This is Mike McNulty of Fastener Technology International Magazine, bringing you the Fastener News Report. Please send your news, pictures, comments, corrections, or complaints to me at mcnulty@fastenertech.com.
Well, hello everyone. This is Carmen Vertullo with your Fastener Training Minute, coming to you from the Fastener Training Institute and beautiful El Cajon, California, home of Carver Labs. This particular episode comes out of a training session I did with a client recently. One of the things we do here at Carver Labs is we help our clients review their catalog data and their website information as it gets presented to their customers for technical accuracy. We want to make sure they don't say things that aren't true, or they properly highlight the benefits of their particular fasteners. And in this case, it was a very good client of ours. I'm going to say the name, Spainauer in Canada. They have one of the most awesome catalogs and websites. And the particular category that we were reviewing were what's called conical spring washers, or Belleville washers. And when I return, I'm just going to run down all the things you should know as a fastener supplier about conical spring washers. Stay tuned.
Thanks, Carmen. Hello, everybody. I am Jo Morris with the Fastener Training Institute. We are full steam into summer, and I hope you can join us for some phenomenal fastener training. For the last several months, we have been promoting our Summer in San Diego Fastener Training Series, and I want to let you know there is still time to join us. All 3 days will be instructed by Carmen Bertullo and presented at his lab, Carver Engineering and Manufacturing in El Cajon, California. Day 1, July 14th, we are going to present fastener specifications and terminology. This is step 1 for anybody in our industry. We're going to be learning about things like consensus standards organizations. I'm talking about ASTM, ANSI, SAE. What are those? Plus, what's the IFI? How can they help us? We're also going to be learning about important terms and definitions for fasteners, plus including a segment on how to handle customer-specific requirements. This class is appropriate for all skill levels, and it really should be required for everybody in the fastener industry. Then on day 2, that's Tuesday, July 15th, we will present Understanding the Bolt to Joint. This class focuses on how bolts work. We're going to be covering the most frequently asked questions: how tight is right, and what is the proper torque for this bolt? This training will teach you how to properly determine the best tightening strategy for any given fastener, and it is a great leader to day 3, which is infrastructure fastening and structural bolting technology. This class is all about things structural. Anybody who sells, buys, supplies, specifies, or installs structural bolting is aware of the many risks associated with this product. Training is essential for all personnel involved. You're going to be learning about structural bolting assemblies, proper specifications and installation practices, waterworks applications, fastening for gasketed joints, troubleshooting and how to handle the hardest job site problems, plus a whole lot more. And as a bonus, if you register for the July 16th infrastructure fastening, your registration includes attendance to Understanding the Bolt to Joint the day prior on July 15th. So that's a bargain. It's 2 for 1. Sign up today at fastenertraining.com. Now back to Carmen.
At Worth, status quo isn't an option. Worth is a global supply chain solutions provider of fasteners, MRO, and safety products, along with value-added services like kitting and assembly, 3D printing, and engineering assistance. Find out what Worth can do for you at worthindustry.com.
Well, welcome back, everyone. This is Carmen Vertullo with the Fastener Training Minute. Today, we are talking about conical spring washers, commonly called Belleville washers, because they were invented by a French guy named Belleville back in 1860-something. I don't know his first name, but you could look it up if you want. The basic premise of a conical spring washer is you take a standard flat washer and you make it into a cone-shaped. Now, sometimes the cones are a little bit elaborate, such as in a product called a square cone washer by Shakeproof, and those are an engineered part. Actually, all Belleville washers, spring washers, are engineered. I'm going to call them Belleville washers from now on. They're all engineered. The first thing to know about them is they're relatively precise components compared to standard washers. The second thing to know about them is they have to have some springiness to them, and that comes from the material being hard. So whether it is made out of 1045 steel or 1075 steel, or possibly some stainless steel such as 17.4 or A286, or even some exotics like Inconel or Hastelloy, it has to be hard enough to have some springiness to it. So even though you might occasionally see Belleville washers made out of like 304 or 316 stainless, they're not very high performance. When we put pressure or flatten the washer, we expect it to recover a certain amount after we remove the pressure. And that's called testing the deflection and the recovery of the Belleville spring washer. And depending on the application, that's one of the most important properties of the Belleville washer. Now, that gets those properties from a couple of different attributes. The first one, obviously, would be the material. How hard is it actually? The second would be the size of the washer, its inside and outside diameter ratio, and then also the thickness of the material that it's made from. And these spring washers have a wide range of performance. They can be made out of very thin metal and be very small, even micro-sized, up to very large, inches and feet in diameter and very thick. And their primary purpose in life is to regulate a clamp load or to provide a spring force. They can provide that spring force with just one washer, or we can stack them up either back to back or face to face. When we stack them face to face or in parallel, we essentially double, triple, whatever the force that is required to compress them. When we stack them back to back, and when I say back, I mean the smaller diameter, we kind of stack them up and they look like, I don't know, an accordion maybe. We don't increase the force, but we increase the amount of compression that's available. So we literally can stack these things up in a long chain, and we end up having what is the equivalent of a really good coil spring. And we see that sort of thing used in things like pressure regulators, in systems where we have a lot of expansion and contraction, such as diesel engine exhaust pipes being clamped together, and so on. Now, I believe that the spring washer, the Belleville washer, is one of the most underutilized fasteners in all of fastenerdom. And here's why I say that. One of its most powerful attributes is the ability to artificially lengthen a screw or a bolt. Now, what do I mean by artificially lengthen? Well, and why does that matter? Well, we know that the longer the bolt in terms of its length to diameter ratio, the better chance it's going to stay tight when it's properly tightened. Very short bolts and screws are very difficult to keep tight and stay tight under vibration because they're not stretched enough. So sometimes we will actually use a longer screw, even if it means lengthening or thickening the components in order to get that long clamp distance inside the joint. And by the way, that's one of the reasons why we have to add stuff to short screws, such as patches and pellets and Loctite and various kinds of tricky washers under the head to keep them from coming loose. Now, if we add a Belleville washer, a very thick, nice, heavy-duty Belleville washer under the head of a short screw, what's going to happen is normally without the Belleville washer, we tighten that screw to snug tight, and it's probably going to be fully tensioned within a quarter of a turn or certainly within a half of a turn. If we add the Belleville spring washer, now it's going to take a lot more angle to get to full clamp load. And that means maybe a full turn or a turn and a half or even 2 turns, depending upon how much compression there is. Let's say that we had a half 20 bolt, and I'm using that because the math is easy. Each of the threads of a half 20 bolt is 50 thousandths of an inch. And if we had a Belleville spring washer that had a compressibility of, let's say, 150 thousandths of an inch, that gives us 3 rotations to compress that washer, which makes that bolt act like it's much longer than it really is. And if we needed more than that, we could stack them up one way or the other, either back to back or front to front. Now, obviously, there's a price to pay. Belleville washers are made out of precise material. They're precisely made in terms of their dimensions, often plus or minus 5 thousandths of an inch, and even more precise on the thickness. They must be tested so that they can perform properly, or we know they can perform properly, and they must have nice edges on them. Because when we compress that Belleville spring washer, we are putting a lot of stress on that metal. So imagine what's happening to the ID of the washer when we compress it. It's getting squished inward. What's happening to the OD? It's getting squished outward. And if we have any flaws or chinks or stress risers, we risk cracking the washer. Another thing we risk with Belleville spring washers in steel, that is hardened steel, 1045. Sometimes they're just called spring steel, 1075. They're high hardness, and we sometimes electroplate them. And you all know what the word I'm about to say is, right? We risk hydrogen embrittlement. So we must make sure that we bake them and test them. It's not an uncommon failure for various kinds of conical washers to experience hydrogen embrittlement failure when they're zinc plated. If you ask me later, I'll tell you about a classic case I had years ago of this. So when we are specifying these washers, one of the things we'll notice is the catalogs have a lot of data. OD, ID, thickness, material, deflection, free height, compressed height, and number of cycles they can handle, all kinds of things like that. So it's an engineered fastener, and they come in all kinds of inch sizes and all kinds of metric sizes. as of now, as far as I know, we don't have any inch standards for spring washers. We do have some DIN standards in the metric world, but I don't think we have any ISO standards for spring washers. If that's wrong, somebody can correct me. I didn't really look it up. Let me know. But just know they're generally available from a lot of different sources. I'm going to say some manufacturers that I'm aware of. This is not a shameless promotion for anybody. But if you do need Belleville spring washers, or if one of the companies I'm about to mention is your company and you would like a shameless promotion, I would love to test some of your spring washers here at Carver Labs. So two of the most common manufacturers that I know of is a company called Key Bellevilles and another one called Salon Manufacturing, Salon. There are 3 or 4 others that have the word Belleville in their names, such as Belleville International, Belleville Springs, American Bellevilles. There's also a washer company called Boker's, and most of the people that make flat washers can provide these as well. So keep in mind, as a fastener supplier, you can give some tremendously good value-added services to your clients when you can find ways for them to put spring washers into their assemblies, because they help keep the part tight. They do a great job of helping to control the torque-tension relationship, and some of them even have other features such as serrations, another anti-vibration feature. And then we have the weird shapes where we have things like the square cone, which is 2 squares on top of each other that we use on relatively small screws. They give a very highly controlled torque, tension, and angle relationship. So they really make it so we can tune the assemblability of the joint to a very fine degree. Well, there's probably more to know about Belleville spring washers than I said, but that's been a pretty long fastener training minute. So I'll stop there, and I want to encourage anybody listening to this, please give me a call or send me an email, and let's do some exploration of the uses of Belleville spring washers. This has been Carmen Vertullo with the Fastener Training Minute. Thanks for listening.
Hi, this is Tim Roberto Jr. from Star Stainless Screw Company. You're listening to Brian and Eric on Fully Threaded Radio.
And it's feature segment time. This time I'm with none other than Big Country Rob Reynolds with InSequel Software. Hey, Rob.
Hey, Eric. How you doing?
Doing great.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, anytime. Seems like just yesterday we were scheming to do this, sitting around the smoker.
Yeah, that's right. Got shag bark.
Yeah, we were putting down some amazing brisket, and of course we had Carmen Vertullo also on a smoker, and TJ with Star. He was doing the ribs this time. Turned out pretty good.
What did we do? 3 briskets and 6 racks of ribs?
Something like that. Plus there was a whole lot of other stuff. Tony Martinez with Buckeye Fasteners brought nice pork shoulder that he did. I told him next year he's got to do the cooking on site. He said, okay, so we're expanding.
Oh, nice. Yeah, there's always room. Shag bark, it's huge. We've got multiple smokers. Shoot, I bring mine down, throw it in the truck and bring her on down. It's a good event. Always great hanging out with Carmen and TJ and yourself. So appreciate you hosting that. That was a good time. I think everybody enjoyed the food, hopefully, and the games as well.
We had some fun, yeah. And of course, we raised a little bit of cash for the bed build. We'll be presenting that in August at Fastener Week, MWFA Fastener Week for Sleep in Heavenly Peace. Yeah, all around a success. And I'm kind of saying that in retro, that is the first sanctioned event of the new NFBBQA, the National Fastener Barbecue Association, of which you are a charter member.
Is this the official start?
I think it's about time. You know, I've been
the NFBBQA. I like it.
Yeah, we've been teasing it for how long?
Oh, shoot. Since we met?
Yes.
12 years ago or so.
I think it's even longer. But, you know, here's the thing, right, Rob. So we just got together and barbecued for the first time. It wasn't this year. It was last year we did Brisket Fest also. That was like the prototype. And all those years that we talked about doing it, we finally got together. I had no idea that you were so well equipped and you were so hardcore about the whole thing because, you know, people talk a big game. Oh, no, you showed up. You had it all. You brought your smoker. You brought the fuel, you know, the wood. You had the, you even had your hammock. So when you got the smoker set up and go. And at 6 a.m., you know where to take your nap.
Yeah, it wasn't my first rodeo. I got into the smoker game. I don't know if we have time for this one, but I got into the smoker game when my daughter was born. My wife and I were living in an apartment, and I was sick of cooking spaghetti, from the jar, the ragu spaghetti jar and noodles. And basically my cooking consisted of eggs and bacon and spaghetti. So when the baby was born, I bought a grill, my first grill. And after doing steaks and chicken and the basic grilling stuff, turned that grill into a smoker. So yeah, that was 15 years ago, but it's just turned into a great time on the weekends. My neighborhood, they'll buy the meats, they'll come over, I'll smoke them, and we'll just have a pool party barbecue. And we probably do that a few times a year. And then every 4th of July, and this July, I'm doing 4 or 5 briskets and 6 butts. So yeah, we have a group in the neighborhood that someone's smoking something every weekend. So we've been doing it a while. It's great. I think, and then you look into what Carmen was telling us. He's cooking, what was he saying, 20 to 30 briskets at least for his event.
Oh yeah, well, he manufactured this huge carousel smoker. I think it's got 4 shelves on it, and they rotate. And he's got a group of guys, and they call themselves, it's for his church group, they call themselves the Holy Smokers.
Yeah. He was showing me the production. It's impressive. So if you're not familiar with the NFBBQA or the brisket fest that we do have, it's not just myself. That I would say all of the pit masters that are there are avid smokers of meats, and if you do make it out, you won't be disappointed in the food.
Well, we all brought our own unique style to it. So I was using a kettle, good old-fashioned kettle. You were doing a water smoker. TJ and Carmen both had offsets, and I borrowed that offset from Jamie Clark over at Hodel. He was kind enough to loan it to Brisket Fest this year, and Carmen did his thing on that machine. And all the different styles, they all turned out really well, but very different approaches, I noticed.
Yeah, lots of ways to skin a brisket, right?
So what's your take on brisket? How do you like to do them?
If I have the time and I don't mind not sleeping, I love the 14 to 16 hour cook starting at midnight and having it, ready for after lunch or so. But the rest is huge, right? Everybody knows that. If you can get 2, 3, 4, 5 hours rested in the cooler, really breaks down. And you can almost make like a pulled brisket with it. But I like to do, these days I do about 4 hours on the smoke and then wrap it up in juices and tallow and whatever else you want to put in there, the good stuff. Usually some coffee grinds is in the rub. But actually, Jake from BTM, he's got the barbecue seasonings.
Oh yeah, the U-Bolt blend.
I've used his before. It's really just the love you give to it, right? If it's got a few hours of smoke and then it's sitting in the juices wrapped up for a lot of it, you can't go wrong with it, with the tenderness of it. But I've done some where you never wrap it. When you get to the 16-hour cooks and you're going at 200 degrees or even lower. Like I've done some at 180, but it take 24 hours. They turn out just as tender. It just depends on the time, how much time you have. But these days, typically I go 4 hours on the smoke, and then it takes about another four to 5 hours wrapped up, and then take it off and set it in the cooler to let it continue to break down those fats. Yeah, so that's pretty much how I do it these days. About a 9-hour cook, and then I've gone up to a 7-hour rest in a cooler. So.
All right, that's some brisket wisdom right there that you just laid down, Rob.
It's a little more like you're doing it with the hot and fast, and then wrap it like a Myron Mixon.
Yeah,
old barbecue champ.
Oh yeah, no, he's definitely one of my mentors on that one. Well, for that whole idea of the rest it's critical for that approach, and I love it, and I almost never miss. But you do sacrifice the bark. When you go hot and fast, you don't get the bark that you do when you go low and slow. Now, here's my question, right. Rob. When did you shift from just the basic grill over to the water smoker that you're using now? Because the thing that distinguishes a real pit master is their ability to control that fire. So if you're driving 180, which I would love to be able to do, or 200, for that low and slow. And, and let's just lay it down right here, Rob. The NFBBQA is officially not sanctioning pellet cookers. you got to burn coals or you got to burn wood, right? So anyway,
yeah, I don't have one of those yet.
Yeah, well, I hope you won't. But no offense to anybody who uses one. It's just not a competition cooker.
Right.
But that's where the real art comes in. How do you approach just keeping that fire consistent for, 8, 10, 12 hours?
Yeah. So I use a Weber Smoky Mountain, which it looks like a taller cylinder type shape. I snake the coals down below. So when I set it up, I layer a snake around the bottom of the bowl. It's basically like the bottom of your kettle grill, right? If people know kettle grills.
Right.
And you lay a layer of coals down 3/4 of a circle around it, sprinkle in the wood chips, put more coals on top, sprinkle in more wood chips, and then only light like a half of a charcoal chimney. And then when that's ready, pour that in at one of the ends of the snake. And then it'll go, I can get about 5 hours without having to touch it that way. And then by that time it's wrapped and back on the smoker, and it doesn't matter what you use from there. You could use coals or a log, but I use a combination of both, wood chunks and logs from then on out. But yeah, I think with smokers, it's hard to keep for the ones I've used anyway. That's the challenge, right? Is keeping it low enough, because a lot of them want to burn hot. And if you use too much coals or use too much wood, that's where you get, the hockey puck texture on a brisket.
Yeah, we've all been there.
Right.
You ever had an experience where you had a big brisket, like, in other words, you had to serve a bunch of people and everything, and it just was a complete disaster and you had to go out for hamburgers?
Not that I remember with a brisket. Definitely have on some chicken, like whole chickens.
Yeah, bone-in chicken is very challenging to do well.
Yeah, I don't know if I have on a brisket, because when I first started doing them, I had the gas grill. I would only turn one of the side burners on, right? So it was more like an offset, like you do on the kettle. And then it was with one burner on. If you take it to low, the thing will go at like the grill I had would go 150, 180. So that's where I cooked them. It'd take forever, but they were delicious.
Are you partial to any particular woods these days?
As far as the cooking wood, I like oak or hickory for the briskets. And when I'm doing pork, I'll do a fruit wood for the ribs or the butts. Usually a combo of cherry and apple.
Oh, yeah.
The pecan wood is awesome. You can use that for anything, but I use that for seafood if I'm smoking fish, which is a little hard to find. But I mean, if you just Amazon, you can find that anywhere. But the pecan wood's awesome for seafood.
I'm a big fan of pecan.
Yeah. If I had a supply like you do, just in my backyard, I'd use whatever was there.
Oh yeah. Well, shagbark
is cutting down the wood to use.
Oh yeah. No, I got cherry trees back there galore. And Of course, shagbark is a colloquial name for hickory. So plenty of that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And we could talk about this all day, which we pretty much have in the past. And, not talk about any fastener software, which is equally important, isn't it?
Hey, every once in a while you do one like that.
Yeah. Well, but on the other hand, there's another pastime that you have that you're very well known for in this industry, and I think it's probably helped you sell more software than barbecue, and that's golf. So before we do cut over to find out what's going on within Sequel these days, you have been on a little bit of a roll. You had a dry spell there, but I've noticed several events now, your name popping up. So you're back.
I played every day of my life from like 12 years old to 23 years old, 24 years old. And when I decided I was done playing golf, I was done. For about 10 years, I'd probably played. Right around then is when I had my baby. A couple years after that is when my daughter was born. And that's when I picked up barbecue. So on weekends, I started I love barbecuing. So I'd start barbecuing more than I was golfing. Probably would only golf a few times a year for 10 years there. But in the past couple of years, especially this year, my boy now is 12. My wife likes to golf. So we joined a little municipal golf course here in our backyard, and we go a couple times a week now. So the dry spell I know why that happened. It's just because I wasn't golfing. And you know how, if you've ever played golf, I know you play golf, but if you're not playing it, if you go from playing every day to playing, a few times a year, it's not like riding a bike. So we didn't have too many victories there at the events. We sprinkle one in every once in a while. But yeah, I've been playing a few times a week this year, and the results are showing.
All right, well, the picture's becoming a lot clearer now. It comes full circle. Okay,
right.
Well, that explains it, and I'm going to look forward to seeing some more Team in Sequel in the winner's circle again. Of course, you team up with the Star guys a lot, I've noticed.
Yeah. Yep.
Who's the best golfer that you know, or one of the best golfers out there in the fastener world?
Dewey from GL.
With Hewitt, sure.
He's solid. We played at the SIFA this year, just the day before the golf event at SIFA. We played 9 holes in Dewey, and Dewey came up behind us, and we joined for the last 9 holes. And he's always winning the Screw Open, the NCFA Screw Open, and other events as well. But he's solid. And then Tim Vath, when I first met him, when it was just Solutions, when Johnny Riddell was still there and they were running Solutions, he was playing every day, and now he's got a couple of kids. He's a great golfer, but he's got a couple of kids and obviously busy with the new position at Lindstrom and with a couple of young kids. He'll be back. I was talking to him at the NCFA social, and I was like, "Don't worry, man. When kids get older, you take them out there, and it's wife loves it, kids love it. You could golf every day if you get them out on the golf course liking it." So
right,
Tim's good. At Star, Brian Wheeler, when he first started, I don't think he played when I first met him. We were playing out there with Kelly Lehman at a Pac West event. Brian, Kelly, and I think he was pretty brand new into golf or didn't play much, maybe once a year, but he's shooting now in the 80s pretty consistently, hitting the ball close to 300 yards on some drives. And so he's improved big time. But he had let me know that Dean at Star is a player. Dean Rosar, never played with him. Maybe he needs to get out to the Screw Open this fall.
Yeah. You don't see Dean at the events much. He's the CIO, as I understand it, over there.
The guys from American Ring, they're good. A decent amount of good golfers. Oh, one more to add. AJ from Holochrome, AJ Gallo, he's solid. We'll be teaming up. Holochrome's manufacturer for Fastenal. We'll be teaming up at the IFE this year.
Okay, who's the most fun to play with? Who's the biggest joker out there?
I would have to say my guys, my group: AJ, Brian, Morgan Wilson, TJ McFarlane, Eric Gates from InSequel. Who else? Oh, Mike Robinson from Star as well.
Yeah. All good people.
Bill Armstrong, MPT Fasteners. That's always a blast.
He is a riot. He's right here too, local.
Yep.
Have you ever been to MPT?
Yes, a couple times.
Are you gonna sell him some software?
We've been talking about it.
I think he's one of those guys who's still running the whole shop on cards.
Yep, he is, and they do a good job. It's highly organized. It's funny how good everybody's handwriting is when you're in that position. Because if we ran stuff on cards at InSequel, nobody will be able to read anything. So it works for them, obviously, but maybe in the future here.
Yeah, those guys are old school all the way. Well, it's a good segue though, because you're in the business of selling software. And what's the newest pitch at InSequel? You guys always have new stuff. I talked to you in Nashville, and you were talking about manufacturing at the time. Is that really what you got your sights focused on? I mean, what's going on over there?
Yeah, we're focused on a lot of things. Obviously, we're ERP and inventory management software. That's where our roots came from, where we started in 2003. But we just found, we always had our what we call item fabrication for secondary processing. That's always been a part of our software from day one for our fashion distributors. But some of our customers started getting into manufacturing their own stuff in-house instead of getting it from their suppliers, maybe a handful or so. So what we found when that happened was typically manufacturing companies do is they'll purchase an MRP software, which is great, for handling their raw material to finished product through multiple steps. And, it ends up falling short a lot of times just from what we hear on the inventory management side for the warehousing, for the connecting sales orders to manufacturing orders. So there's a gap between these ERP systems and MRP systems. So we built an MRP that goes along with our ERP, and it's all one database. So there's visibility throughout, and you're going to get that material planning that you need from taking raw materials and components, calculating the required materials based off the bill of materials and the production schedule. And it's all tied into the accounting, to the sales order side. So instead of purchasing a MRP system that costs you a small fortune and then falls short on your distribution side, and then needing two systems that don't talk well together, we've bridged that gap. So everything's one database. We have MRP software and distribution software. So any of our distributors, customers that get into manufacturing or a lot of times what we're seeing nowadays is they're purchasing their own manufacturing company, especially with the tariffs, bringing the manufacturing into their company. So we've planned for that. We have it available now. And if you are a manufacturer, we have both, and we'd love to take care of you. So especially in the like our fastener manufacturers, our fastener distributors, if there's something when we're going through the sales process, through the demos, if what we do, since it's our niche and 3/4 of our customer base is in the fastener industry, if there's something in the software that isn't there yet, there's a good chance you won't need any custom. But if you do, we're just going to put it in the software for you guys. So that's where we're at these days. That's kind of the newer, a lot of people don't know, but that's kind of the approach we're taking, is just bridging that gap so people don't need two systems for MRP and ERP.
All right. So I think you kind of answered one of my questions about how you decided to move InSequel into the MRP space. It sounds like it's really kind of a market demand or a request that you're hearing a lot of.
It is, yeah. We see, everybody's dealing with the tariffs these days, and we're seeing domestic manufacturing come. I mean, there's an uptick in that, obviously, and some of our customers are buying manufacturing companies. It's happening all over, though, even if they're not our customers, where distributors are bringing in a new manufacturing company in-house. So yeah, bridging that gap between using two systems for the distribution side versus the manufacturing side has been key for us, because as far as we know, there's not another system out there that does that with one database like we do. So yeah, we're looking into joining the IFI. We went to the event they had down in Hollywood there, Florida, at the Jimmy Buffett Resort, and they've got a golf outing coming up in July. On July 14th. So I'm going to try to get it accepted into that. And hopefully we'll be at the fall show as well if we get accepted into the IFI. So yeah, that is a big push for us, trying to help those manufacturers out from spending a small fortune on two systems that falls short functionality wise. Why not pay less and get more, for the software? So that's where we're at these days.
There you go. Well, there's a reason InSequel Software is the market leader. And yeah, that golf outing in just a few days, I'm sure you're going to be there. And I don't think you have anything to worry about getting into the IFI. Yeah, that event's happening October 11th through the 14th down in Louisville, Kentucky.
Yeah, are you going to be at that one, Eric?
I'm going to head down myself. We're doing a lot more lead gen for manufacturing these days. So the FCH Sourcing Network is kind of moving in a similar direction. So it's one of the reasons that when we were talking in Nashville, this whole conversation caught my ear, Rob. I mean, you're always welcome on the podcast, but I was so happy to hear that InSequel's moving in the direction of supporting manufacturers as well, because I think you hit it. Domestic manufacturing is really on top of the fastener world's agenda right now.
Absolutely.
And barbecue. Well, touching back on the NFBBQA idea, when people started to hear about Brisket Fest and all the fun we had and everything, of course, everybody says, oh, I want to come next year and on and on. But in actuality, it's hard for everybody to get in one place at one time. However, I think what we need to start looking at is doing sanctioned events in the fastener industry in connection with our other events and stuff like that, and see what we can do with it. Because one thing's for sure, this industry loves barbecue.
That's right. Once people start to get a little taste of the NFBBQA, wouldn't be surprised if we got some invites to other shows.
Yeah, you know it, man. You know
regional
it.
Stuff.
Yep. And before you get out of here, why don't you clear something up? Because people do ask from time to time, who gave you the Big Country moniker?
That's from Rich Cavoto. I'm sure nobody knows who that is, but that's Rich Cavoto.
Oh yeah, nobody knows Rich. Yeah,
that's my fastener dad. We played the first time we played golf. He was telling me about Hollywood, Jason Bertone, and how he bombs it. Right, Jason can hit the ball pretty far. So Jason, Bob Bayer, myself, and Rich were playing in Vegas before they had the golf outing, the day before the show, and I guess he says I hit a country mile. So that's where Big Country came from. It stuck from that day. I mean, and the fact that I do barbecue too, I guess that doesn't hurt it.
No, that's a good one. You got to keep it. I love it. Rob Big Country Reynolds. And Cavoto is one of those guys who's just begging for a nickname, but I don't know that he has one, and I don't have one handy, but he's such a great guy.
It's Dad. If you're looking for a nickname for Rich, we were at the IFE. I was buying him a drink, and I forgot what he wanted. So the bartender asked, and when he told me, I said, hey, can you get my dad a Bud Light or whatever it was? And he called me son from that day on. So I call him Dad from this day on, but he's just the fastener dad. Rich is not only a great salesman, but great person. And second dad seems like a good way to put it.
Big Daddy Rich Cavoto.
Big Daddy. There we go. Even better.
How's your dad doing?
My dad's doing good. I think he's enjoying
semi-retirement. You could say it.
Yes. Oh, it's certainly semi-retirement. I think he's enjoying spending time with the grandkids and watching golf and playing golf. And he's half the year in North Carolina, just outside of Pinehurst, North Carolina these days. And then half the year up here in Michigan. All the years of hard work and traveling 340 days out of the year. He's enjoying just chiming in whenever he wants,
Well, he certainly earned it. I had a chance to see him and Kim out there in L.A.
Pac
for
West.
the Pac West a couple months ago. It was good to see him.
Yeah, they're planning on coming back to the next one too. I think it's in Anaheim again in March. Sequel started out on the West Coast for the most part. He was out in Cali. At one time he was talking about getting an apartment out there, back in the early 2000s, just because he was out there so much. Obviously, that's a hotbed for distributors. So a lot of our initial customers are out on the West Coast, and they go to that event. So he plans to be back next year too. And that one actually, we did all right with the old men, the Chucky brothers and my pops. We ended. They carried me that day, Eric. I think we shot 16 under.
Oh wow! Well, Joe Truckee is no slouch either, man. He hits the ball a long way.
He does. They're both pretty good, and between the three of them, they ham and egged it. They were making putts and chipping in from everywhere. And
do you know the story when Joe Truckee got his knees replaced and the first game back? Did you hear that story?
I didn't hear about the first game back. No.
This is going back years, but he aced. He got an ace on his first game back after knee replacement.
Really?
If I remember the story correctly, I don't know. I think he listens to the podcast, so he'll let me know if I'm wrong on that. But it was like near miraculous.
Man, what a way to come back.
Yeah, a lot of great stories. I mean, they would only be better if we could get a West Coast barbecue event going, and that way I could participate because I'm not much of a golfer. But
yeah, maybe they have smokers for rent. I'm sure they do.
Are you kidding me? We're in Vertulo country. He's going to supply the cooker.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Shoot, to do whatever it was, 20, 30, 40 briskets, I imagine they got some decent smokers.
Carm has the technology. You want to talk with Rob Reynolds about InSequel, either for purely distribution or manufacturing or both, inxsql.com, and he's at all the events. Rob Big Country Reynolds, InSequel Software. You're always invited on this podcast, and I look forward to seeing you in Louisville or at the NFDA or wherever we next meet. Good luck at the IFI golf outing.
Appreciate it. We'll definitely see you soon. Thanks for having me on today.
Fully Threaded Radio is a production of Fasteners Clearinghouse. Music provided by Audionautics.